This
Okay,
conference will now be recorded.
great. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Welcome to September and September weather, or October weather, I guess. So we've got a number of things to go through today. I don't know how many of you, and Brian, this concludes you and the Green Bank are involved in special session stuff for the energy bill. Perhaps we'll hear a little bit more about that later. I'm up to my nostrils in a different effort in that regard. So apologize that I didn't really have a chance to review the materials before the meeting. So but we'll work through it and we'll get started. I think with opportunity for any public comment. If people are on the call that would like to make any public comments, one more chance if you're on mute. Okay. Okay, if not, we'll move forward then, and we have the pleasure of always a pleasure when we can bring on new blood and new members to the committee. So John Viglione with the Office of Consumer Counsel, which has had its own evolution going on in the last several months. It sounds like things may be stabilizing there, John, but welcome to the board, and maybe you could just tell folks a little bit about yourself and what's happening at Consumer Counsel's office.
Fingers crossed John's on the line. He may not be on the line.
Let's see. I don't see a J and V on there, so we'll keep an eye out for that.
Great. We'll
I
come back, but I'll flag it.
don't see them, so yeah. All right, why don't we keep moving then? All right. The other, always a favorite, is the minutes approval from this time. It's the June 17th meeting. Hopefully, people have had a chance to review those. And for those who have, I certainly entertain a motion for adoption.
This
Hi,
is
this
John
is Brenda.
Harry. Moved.
And this is Brenda. I second.
Terrific. Boy, people are right on top of it. Thank you, John and Brenda. Item's been moved and seconded. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor of approval, say aye.
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 And opposed? And any abstention? Okay, the minutes then are approved. Moving on. Okay, we've got, as many of you know, there's been a lot of hard work going on over several months now to provide some metrics and data regarding the importance of energy jobs to our state. I believe that report is finalized and out, and I guess the question for us today is sort of what's happening with that and what our next steps are in terms of taking advantage of all that hard work.
Excellent. Yeah. So thank you for that setup there, Eric. This is Brian. So yeah, it was a little bit more than a year ago that we all made the decision to do a Connecticut-specific report around the clean energy jobs. We hired a BW Research Partnership, which was very actively involved with the DOE in setting up the clean energy jobs. I don't want to say calculated, but the way of estimating it across the country. It's kind of become the standard for it. And they've worked with a number of the New England states, as you can see here. They've been working with Massachusetts for quite some time. But I really want to acknowledge all of you for kind of hanging in there for the last year through this process, working with the utilities. You guys were great just in terms of cost sharing. You made the contracting really easy. And then, all of you in terms of vetting and commenting on the work that BW Research put out. So we ended up spending quite some time taking what was and what felt like an academic report and turning it more into a highlight report. So we really based it on the best practice model that's Massachusetts. You can kind of see the cover there, very picture oriented, eliciting a lot of emotion and data from that picture. Their report within the report is a lot of diagrams as opposed to text. So we tried to model that with our first report here, and I think we got there. We've got the approvals from everybody, Deep, Eversource, UI. I think, Liz, we've got a few little things to work on with UI, minor items that you'll get over to us. But with that, we've got everyone approved and lined up for the report to be final. So it's really now about, what do we want to do in terms of next steps as the report is done. And these are just simply talking points or discussion points for us today. We could work together on drafting a press release from the Joint Committee, from the utilities, from the entities. That's one thing that we could do. We do have a webinar coming up September 24th, where we're going to be sharing our second COVID-19 survey. So that's kind of an element of timing that might help inform a press release date. We could work with BW Research to do a webinar, a much more in-depth webinar on the report, inviting all of our stakeholders to listen in and learn more about the findings and of course the impacts of COVID-19. So we've, as part of our work with BW Research, they've been producing monthly memos on COVID-19 unemployment filings on clean energy. So I think I sent that around yesterday. So we could have a webinar. And then we should also be looking ahead at the FY 2021 report. It felt like this year was a heavy lift. I think now we've got a solid foundation to build on for 2021. So it's just a matter of if we want to move forward again with a joint project through the Joint Committee. The Green Bank has set aside resources to continue that. We can begin that process with BW Research. So this was simply a couple of bullet points to get us talking about what we would like to do now that the report is near final, 99% final. What do we want to do as a next step? So why don't I kind of leave it there? Thoughts, discussion?
Brian, this is Steve Bruno. I like the idea of the press release and some kind of notice.
Cool. Excellent. And
This is John Harity. I think, within reason that this sooner the better, because it just seems as though as soon as you produce data, it begins to get old. And so it would be good to have this out.
Yeah, good point. Great. So with
Hi,
that,
this is Lonnie. I'm just thinking maybe a press conference as well. If you're going to do it, I think you can bring in some folks who, standing appropriately distanced, could do something, because this is significant.
yeah. Any thoughts, ideas, Lonnie, like just in COVID or others in COVID-19, and where the legislature is with the special session, like what's the backdrop of the press conference? Is it at a company? Is it at a business? Is it at a company that delivers these services? Is it at a business that is receiving the services? What do you think the most effective backdrop is for that?
I mean, either or. I mean, I think what you want to show is that you've got companies with very important jobs that are struggling. I think you want to show that they're really working their butts off to stay engaged and to keep it going. But I think people really need to understand we're talking about jobs here, in addition to, we now have, smoke in the air today. It's all of this stuff is coming together simultaneously. So it'd be good to kind of play that card as well. Mm-hmm. We're at a critical juncture. And the last thing we need to do is lose our energy businesses.
Okay, good. Good. Other thoughts?
This is John. I think if nothing else, if we had to do it like, say, at the Capitol or the LOB, in order to be able to rely on whatever the press is there, that we'd want to have stakeholders
Yeah.
to talk about the importance of green energy jobs, and approach it through that venue, rather than maybe picking a location. It's hard to get the press to go to anywhere these days, I think. So it might be easier to just bring the stakeholders into one place, and as Lonnie said, appropriately social distanced and face masks.
And, I'm building on what John just said, have some workers there, have really kind of pull on those heartstrings as well. Those are people, those are families, those are people who have these exciting new careers, kind of tell that story as well, so that it's not just, it doesn't have a corporate look.
Okay. Is there a blend here of online with the on-site? I mean, maybe the event is on-site with the some of the key stakeholders. I'm just trying to be conscious of the public health thing that we're in. Like I'm envisioning like the crowd at the NBA games, for example, that they're showing right now with the kind of Zoom people in the crowd. But
yeah, I was just gonna ask that question, which is like, do virtual press conferences work, and is that an option we should consider? So I was like thinking a similar line of thought, Brian.
yeah, it's like we want to remain vigilant, but we want to give also the location to pull at the heartstring. So okay, so why don't we do this? We'll take that under consideration, and we'll bug a few of you as we try to pull something together. So I think we've got, press release, sooner is better, and location. If we can figure out a virtual press conference that brings something on site with online, let's do it. Anything else? 2021, are folks okay with continuing this work into 2021, the next fiscal year?
Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Brian? Continuing, I mean, the work, you mean to create another report in 2021? Is that what?
Yeah, I think it would be easier this time because rather than doing a lot of write-up, you might remember one of the first versions of this report was like a 80-page, 100-page thesis. We really turned that data into stronger visuals. So I think the next step would be, okay, are we committed to doing one for FY 2021? If the answer is yes, then okay, I'd work with my utility colleagues to do what we did. So, I enter the contract with BW Research, and then we do bilaterals with the EDCs to share the cost, and then we get back together probably at our next board meeting with our first, conversation with BW Research on FY 2021. So I think it's a smaller budget, and it's just data collection and analysis.
It feels like you have to do it. Maybe we've already said it's sort of like what Brenda does with Operation Fuel. How are we doing now? How are we doing this year? I think you really have to kind of follow up.
Especially with
I
COVID.
agree. I think it would be, this is Brenda. I think I agree with Lonnie in that it would be good to kind of track that in the next year.
Okay.
This is John. Brian, do you think we could get an idea from BW Research whether they would expect much by way of changes within the year's time?
Yeah. What I could do, maybe a thought would be, I can get a subset of us on a call with them on what it might look like next year, given what we've gone through with the first report and given what we're going through with COVID-19. You know, what are some of the changes they might suggest? Just kind of like a, yeah, I think that conversation would be worth it before we do a PSA. It's kind of a scoping conversation, scope of work. Cool. Okay. All right. So on the press front, so Steve, why don't I coordinate with you and Liz if that's okay on the utility side, and then Mike, I'll coordinate with you on the deep side, and then we'll just try to pull some of these pieces together on press release, press conference, details and logistics.
Sounds good, Brian.
Yeah. Brian, this is Glenn Reed. I'll note that Linda King, the board's new executive secretary, I don't think was able to make the call today. She wasn't feeling well. But we certainly want to post something on the board website too. And I think the companies may be able to use this information to update their estimate of job impacts from efficiency in their 2021 plan update.
Cool. Great. Yeah, hope she's feeling better. She's got a lot on her plate. Okay, and so Glenn, would you suggest in this case that to include Linda and/or you as well?
Why don't you include both of us at this point, and we can decide moving forward if just one of us should be participating. And I think the companies can handle the incorporation of any of the numbers from this report directly into the plan update, assuming that they're sufficiently analogous to the 2017 DOE numbers that are currently cited.
Perfect. Okay, cool. All right, anything else before we move to the next agenda item? All right, thank you. That was great feedback.
Great. What's up next for us? Let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, a lot of work going on over on the EEB side. It'd be great to just sort of get a high-level overview on where things stand as we try and find ways to integrate the plans of the efficiency board and the green bank. So where do things stand on the EEB side of things?
So this
Cool.
is Steve
Yeah.
Bruno, and I could start off. I don't know if Glenn or Mike Lee, you wanted to add anything before I started, or I was going to go through a short abbreviated deck that we presented at the last board meeting.
Glenn, you want to maybe just give a very quick high level, remind people of, the process of the annual, the 3-year, the annual,
Sure.
and the
Yeah,
annual.
I was going to suggest that if Steve could do that. If not, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Eric. So, as noted in the title here, these are the 3-year 2019 to 2021 plan priorities. We, the board, the companies, I should say, with board involvement, develop a detailed 3-year conservation and load management plan. We also do annual plan updates for the second and third year of the plan. So we are in the process, or the company's in the process, of working with the board and the consultants on developing that third final year 2021 plan update. It will be filed on or before November 1st. The plan and text will be reviewed, and we all assume approved at the October board meeting. In addition to the November filing, the companies do a budget true up and adjust savings accordingly when they know final year-end spending on March of the following year. So March 1st will be a follow-up filing, though the changes there tend to be more formulaic than anything else. And at this point, consultants and the companies are working and going back and forth on tables and plan text, and we hope to have draft documents available to the board within the next week plus. Yeah. Any questions about that? Steve, all yours.
Sure. Thanks, Glenn. Now let's go through these. This was a subset of the presentation that was made to the board at the September meeting, and then so I'll just go through a couple slides here. And the first slide is the 2021 plan priorities, and these have been pretty consistent through the full 3 years. As Glenn noted, we updated every year, but the 7 were advance the state energy and environmental policy goals, tailored solutions for the various market segments and equitable distribution, direct savings to customers, so basically projects and programs that provide energy savings to customers, develop and maintain a sustainable workforce, continue towards comprehensive energy strategies, comprehensive projects, etc. We added in demand reduction strategies. The companies have increased over the 3-year plan the amount of funding towards the active demand response programs, and then also continue to explore and implement financing options. Next slide. In terms of the key updates that are in this 2021 plan update, as everyone is aware, there are a lot of changes to incentive processes, contractor payments for all in response to COVID-19. So we added a section in the plan to talk about the items that the companies have done with regards to COVID-19 to help out customers and contractors. And then there's also an increased focus on equitable distribution. So we outlined a couple of items for the C&I section and residential section in terms of serving disadvantaged communities, Main Street community outreach efforts, and a residential side targeting disadvantaged communities, and then distressed cities and hardship customers. And I think additionally, and Mike Lee may be hitting this later, but there's also a deep request for written comments due in October for other input on ways to serve customers equitably. And then we would include any updates in time in our plan filing an update, as well as DEEP may issue certain conditions of plan approval, so we implement them in our 2021 plan update. 2 other items that are kind of noteworthy to add is we're researching, reviewing code attribution and compliance savings, and then UI is going to be adding in a gas demand response pilot. Eversource is currently doing one in Massachusetts right now, so we're not too sure whether we need to do one in Connecticut as well. So, so right now I think it may be just a UI only item. Next slide. In terms of high level budgets and lifetime savings, the combined budgets for electric companies, Eversource and UI, are $188 million, and the 3 gas companies are $53 million. And then from a savings perspective, 2 billion lifetime savings, 2 billion kilowatt hours. And then from a natural gas perspective, lifetime 81.1 million CCF. And as Glenn mentioned, we do annual updates and we do true ups. So we had provided initial 2020 in March of 2020. We provided a filing update with estimated budgets and revenues for 2021. Those are pretty consistent, but as we had increased our incentives to help with the re-engagement and back to work and customers looking for help, we increased some of the incentives on some of the items. So as we increase our incentives, we're getting less savings. So there is a reduction in the savings that we originally filed in March of this year for the 2021 year. So we're updating those numbers, working with the board consultants, and then also every year we look at what evaluation studies tell us. Those items get reflected in the program savings document, and then we incorporate those into our savings models as well. Next slide. And the rest I have, I won't necessarily go, I'll go through them really quickly, but I have two slides on revenues, electric and gas, and one slide on budgets. So at a high level, the first one was electric, second one that's $188 million on the right-hand corner. And you can see the breakdown for what the revenue sources are, primarily from the CAM on customers' bills. Next slide is the natural gas revenues. That's the CAM charge on customers' gas bills, $53 million. And you can see the three companies across on the right. And then the last slide in the appendix was basically a breakdown of the combined budgets, electric and gas. So if you add the electric and gas together, it's $241 million for the program year 2021. And then you can see the breakdown by the electric and gas utilities, as well as the breakdown and what we charge or what we budget for in terms of the residential C&I programs, and then the other educational and customer engagement programs. That was it. I think, Glenn, you did a nice job with the overall process. We're hoping to get this, our final version for the board for the October board meeting with updated text, updated budgets and savings, and then for board approval then for filing November 1st. Any questions?
Great, thank you for that, Steve. This is Brian. So just in general, as we've kind of talked about integrating the CL&M process into the Green Bank process, into coordinating our dates and times on this joint committee. So this is the pretty regular schedule, right? There's nothing different here than the schedule that we've been on. There may be a little bit more difference here given COVID-19 impacts, but this is the process. So we just continue on.
Yes, it fits perfectly with our calendar. Exactly, Brian.
Great. Yeah, so just to kind of refresh the joint committee and new members. So we had spent a lot of time last year digging into our strategic planning cycles for the CL&M plan and the comprehensive plan of the Green Bank to try to align the dates and times of these meetings so that we could appropriately provide updates, as well as solicit questions, comments as each of us heads into, as Steve was mentioning there, we're heading into the October review and approval of the EEB, and then the filing with PURA in November. So this is part of that process to make sure we're just kind of coordinating through this joint committee. Any questions, comments from anybody for Steve or Glenn?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Glenn. So,
Thank you, Ryan.
Mike Lee had asked us to, and I think this goes perfectly with the 7th priority that you laid out there, Steve, in terms of the CL&M plan, in terms of how we're working on financing programs. So historically, this joint committee, the way we ran agendas was really built around these 5 end-use customer segments: residential single family, residential multifamily, small business, medium to large business, and institutional customers, which is to say that our respective teams are working together programmatically in these areas. I think when we did this, had this meeting about a year ago, it was pretty clear that the groups, that the teams, our staff are doing really well on integration. So let me just kind of walk through, and I'll give it my best shot. My team, some of my team members are on the call, so they can help fill in some gaps, and same with you, Steve, Liz, Ron, anything else I might be forgetting. So just in terms of how the Green Bank might be helping through financing programs support the CL&M plan, things like the Smart E-Loan. We've got the ability now to support health and safety within the Smart E-Loan. We've got current special offers using the remaining American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds that we have for interest rate buy-downs that are supporting renewable heating and cooling, EV rechargers at homes, and battery storage. We've currently got a proposal, we'll talk about that later, that aligns our interests. We've got a green and healthy homes project where we're trying to understand how energy burden reduction in combination with healthcare, alleviating existing health and safety issues can improve livability from most vulnerable. Lots of elements to that. Mike Lee, you could probably speak more to that these days than me, given the conversations with Carrie and IPC. On the residential multifamily side, we've got a number of different loan programs. The Navigator pre-development loan, which is intended to try to understand what property owners' challenges are with regards to energy improvements. So kind of helping them at the early planning stage, and then moving them along to, assessing what can be done to then doing some more substantial investments in the property through the Lime loan, which is now not only low income, but also market rate through Capital for Change. Of course, we've got CPACE. We all know about CPACE. There's a health and safety loan. I think, Mike, we sent out an update on that, where that loan is. And the Green and Healthy Homes project that I just spoke about. On the small business side, we've been working really well on capitalizing the small business energy advantage with Eversource and Amalgamated Bank. And then CPACE, there are a number of lenders out there, private lenders who can support small businesses as well. On the medium to large business side, I think we're actually looking at a business energy advantage program, a larger program. Maybe I'll leave that to Steve and Mackie. You guys can kind of fill in some gaps there. And then on the institutional side, of course, the teams did a great job working with Amalgamated Bank to expand the small business energy advantage beyond a 4-year on-bill loan up to $100,000 per meter to up to $1 million in a 7-year term at 0% for municipal and state projects. So what a great, awesome program to help government agencies reduce their energy costs by using the on-bill mechanism at 0% for some really substantial types of projects. Why don't I leave it there, and maybe Steve, Mackie, or others, if you want to add in, or if there are any questions.
Mackie, do you want to add anything first?
You can go on, Steve.
I was just the only point I was gonna note with the for medium to large business, just explain the BEA program is similar to the small business program, but it's for like the next size customer. So we're looking forward to that program, working with Green Bank and Amalgamated to pull more projects through that financing offer. So I'm looking forward to that one a lot. And the small business program has worked well with Amalgamated and Green Bank, where Eversource funds the loans first, and then on a quarterly basis, we sell the loans off. What I will note is that because of the COVID situation, that the volume of those loans has been decreasing on the small business side, but we're hoping that that'll pick up as the businesses get more enhanced offerings. Thanks.
Cool. And I think, Glenn, you had a broader question on the impacts of COVID-19 and the need to provide additional incentives to end-use customers to catalyze more energy improvements on their properties, reducing the need for financing of the programs. So I checked in with our team, and in general,
And Brian, just to clarify, it wasn't so much the need for reduced financing. The question was more, given the already increased incentives that the CLM programs have been offering as a result of the pandemic, have we seen reduced demand for financing? Not so much suggesting we need reduced financing, but whether or not we've been seeing less demand. And I think, and I'll let you and Steve answer the question.
Yeah, no, thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
So I think that what the team said was there's not, in the programs that we have here, there's not a reduction in demand for those financing programs, because in the cases of residential on insulation, the HES microloan would kind of pick up, or that might see lower volume The heat pump pilot, we're seeing a few loans come through Smarty, but we're still trying to get our legs under us with the incentives there on the heat pump pilot. So I think they would say no, we're not seeing a reduction in financing demand for financing.
Yep, thank you.
Just to add to that, Glenn, from the utility-based programs,
Yep.
I can kind of pull the numbers in for the Energize CT loan, which is the heating loan that's on bill. That volume is pretty consistent with 2019. And then the other loan, the HES loan, last year, a lot of loans, those moved to the Smarty. There was like 330 loans last year, and through July we're at 127. So that's a small $0 to $3,000 loan. That one is pretty consistent with last year as well. So where we're seeing the fall off was when for small business, when we stopped the in-home services, between March and June, that's where we see the drop off. So that we're running behind on that one.
So that may be more a function of overall participation than higher incentives. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Thanks, Glenn.
Good. Thank you. Thank you both.
Cool. Any other questions or comments? And then Mike. We're getting ahead to you, Mike. But go ahead.
Yeah, let me add just where we are, particularly for the Green Bank folks, where we are in the Green and Healthy Homes project. So separate from the Green and Healthy Homes project, the Energy Efficiency Board is planning to host a workshop on to just get ideas and have folks, stakeholders present strategies for how we can address health and safety barriers to energy efficiency. So, part of it is how do we identify a long-term sustainable funding stream that addresses a lot of the sort of non-energy related home repairs and improvements that need to be made prior to a house, being able to either go through the energy audit or be weatherized. And, one of the challenges has always been sort of like figuring out what that long-term funding stream is. So we're going to start a process to try and sort of like get folks to get in a room and start thinking about what are our options. The Green and Healthy Homes program is certainly an option that we think is, pretty high on the list, but we don't want to necessarily close the door to anything else that stakeholders might come up with. So we should be organizing the workshop for sometime in October. So hopefully you'll get an invitation at some point in the near future.
Perfect. Thank you. I knew you could. Thank you for covering that. So if we're okay on questions and comments, Mike, I'm going to give you the screen to be able to share. So it's going to come to you right now. And feel free to go ahead and share your screen when you're ready, and you'll be all set.
All right. Give me 1 second.
Cool. And then just so folks know, we are moving into agenda item number 6, which is a debrief on the special session, the legislative session. Actually, this is the time in our calendar year where we would have come out of the session, and this would have been our first meeting, and we would have updated each other on what's happened in the session. But now we're going to spend that time looking at this LCO 3920 and the special session bill, and then talk a little bit about the regulatory process on grid modernization. So Mike's going to pull up the special session bill.
If I was smart enough to actually figure out what happened to my screen.
I was trying to buy you time there, Mike.
I know. It says I have it. Man, this is very embarrassing. I usually am better at this. Do you know where I'm supposed to go, Brian? Sorry, everybody.
No problem. So on your GoToMeeting, if you see a monitor on your little kind of your dashboard there, hit that monitor and it'll say share your screen. And then,
Okay, so hey Brian, so there's I don't know if you're looking at it. It shows that I'm in here twice, and I think you shared the screen a different version of me who's no longer offline.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. So let me do that. Give me 1 second. Change presenter to. Okay, try that. It says presenter.
Yep. All right, we're good. It should come up in any second now.
Perfect. You're up. Awesome.
All right. So yeah, I pulled some of the key points from the draft bill that's before the Energy and Technology Committee. So I'm just gonna sort of give you the highlights, and we can go from there if folks have questions about it. So next slide. So the first portion covers performance-based incentives and penalties. A lot of this is related to storm response, but the language would clarify that PURA has the ability to do performance-based incentives and penalties. The governor often refers to this as performance-based regulation or performance-based rate making. This next provision would basically say that the utilities have to compensate customers for spoiled food and medicine if in the case of certain outages. The draft bill also, essentially directs DEEP to develop a report that looks at the value of being in the wholesale market in ISO New England, and this is really looking at can we meet our clean energy goals while still participating in ISO New England, and what are the costs and benefits of staying in versus some other arrangements. This the language also creates a resilience program. It modifies the existing DEEP microgrid program and includes language about resilience. This also, I should note, is the first time I'm told that there is a definition of resilience that would be covered in the statute if this were to pass. And so this would really give DEEP the ability to issue grants that address resilience that are not part of a microgrid. So that is the major change there. This, for those of you that watched the informational hearing last week or 2 weeks ago, this was one of the issues that came up, but this would essentially appoint an independent consumer advocate board position to the board of the utilities. So then the Office of the Consumer Counsel, or the Consumer Counsel rather, would be the entity that appoints this person to sit on the utility board. There's a provision in here that would allow DEEP to issue an RFP or a solicitation for conservation and load management plans administered by a third party. So, I mean, this would essentially sort of be another option in addition to having the utilities administer the energy efficiency programs. Oh, sorry. And then one last thing, which is on this last slide, is there was a change here that would have changed the cost benefit language that now governs the energy efficiency programs. The existing language, this is in the second bullet, it says to ensure that programs are designed to obtain energy savings and system benefits. That's the existing language. The change would make it to energy savings and societal benefits. And one of the major things that would allow would be a greater inclusion of non-energy impacts, such as greenhouse gas emission reduction value in the cost benefit tests for the energy efficiency programs. And so all these random numbers, I left them in there. If you want to look up, that is the specific line in the draft bill that the language comes from. So if you want to look it up, you can just use that number and you can figure out where it is. So let me leave it at that and open it up for discussion. And feel free to, Brian, you're welcome to jump in if there's a key item that I didn't cover here that you think is worth mentioning for the group.
Cool. No, I guess the only other thing I would say is Deep had a lot of foresight in recommending a definition for vulnerable communities, which is great. You know, a recognition that there are populations in Connecticut that are less resilient to impacts like rate shocks or storms. And it seemed like you are putting within the bill a prioritization or at least a definition of what it is. So that was a lot of good foresight on Deep's part. Any questions, comments from others? All right. I'm gonna take back the screen, Mike.
That's good.
This is John Harity, and I was just wondering how much of the proposed language changes have to do with reaction to the perceived failure to respond adequately to the storms versus other issues like climate change. Because there's just a lot to digest in those few little slides.
Yeah, and forgive me, John. I did a poor job setting it up. So LCO 3920 was the emergency response special session bill, which focused almost entirely on the rate increases in the storm response to Isaias during the summer. So
Yeah.
It focused exclusively on those two things, not anything.
Okay. All right. No, that was just my ignorance, I guess, but thank you.
Hey, Brian, it's Eric. So just to wrap that up, because I haven't been able to focus on that either. So a couple versions. So what's the version that's I guess the latest version? You have an LCO number for that, or could someone send that around to everybody? If you don't have an LCO number handy.
Mike, if you can chat that out, if you have it. It's 3920 is the last one I've seen. I don't know where anything else is.
You said that's the one that's almost exclusively, in response to concerns about the performance of the utilities.
That's right.
Did that also have the language that was just provided on that slide about the societal benefits?
Yep, it's all in there. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I think that's sort of part of the and I defer to Lonnie on this, but it's supposed to be focused only on the narrow opening that the governor called the special session for, but the chairs of the committee have the liberty to sort of expand the scope to some extent. So that's why there are things in here that might not seem like they're directly related to the storm response.
Well, they have the liberty to try,
Yeah.
but there are, the rules are the rules. So.
I think this is Lonnie. Leadership is saying to me that they're going to have a bipartisan bill, and if it's a talker, it's going to be a problem. So, I think they're trying to get in and get out. And
Yep.
as you guys know, could be a lot of last minute conversations, but I think they feel that they've kind of got bipartisan backing for what they've got now.
Cool. Okay, so it sounds like that's the bill. Okay, anything else? Any other questions, comments on LCO 3920? All right, so just kind of shifting gears here a little bit onto regulatory matters. So other things that are happening, this also goes back to you, Lonnie, as well, in terms of the grid modernization bill you passed in, I want to say maybe 2015, the 2015 special session. But docket number 17-1203 is the equitable modern grid docket that's being taken up by PURA. They reopened this docket, I want to say back in October of last year. and they're looking at 11 different reopeners. They've focused initially on the first 6 that you see on this list, and then recently, within the last 2 months, they opened up reopeners 7 through 11. Energy affordability appears to be a really important priority in terms of rates to vulnerable communities, dealing with arrearages and energy burden. Brenda, I'll invite you to say a few things if you want to as well. But it appears, since it's the top one here in the list, that it's a priority that Pura is looking to dig into. And then I'll talk a little bit about electric storage, but a lot of other important things: AMI, zero emission vehicles, interconnection standards, non-wires alternatives. But Brenda, anything you wanted to add on energy affordability, or anybody?
Hi, thank you so much for teeing me up, Brian. The energy affordability piece has been amazing, because what it has done is kind of forced all of the players and providers into solution-based planning. And I believe that we're still wrapping things up. The prosecutorial team at Pura has submitted their recommendations, and there's some pretty good recommendations that are coming out of that piece. So we're very happy. The providers are very happy advocates with this process, and hoping that we can provide a better level of service for those who are in need. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Brenda. And then, so I wanted to just add a little bit on the battery storage reopener, which is reopener number 3. As Steve spoke about earlier in terms of demand response programs and active demand response specifically. So we've got, or we will have, 350 megawatts of behind the meter residential solar households across the state, 45 to 50,000 households. If we begin to put batteries in those homes, we can not only help those homeowners become more resilient through backup, but more importantly, we can socialize the benefit of those solar PV and battery storage systems by storing the solar power and dispatching it when the grid needs it the most. So whether that is during ISO New England summer peak periods, or active demand response from the utilities when they foresee in a subsequent day the need to dispatch that solar PV system to reduce peak on the grid. So we put together a proposal that looks at an upfront incentive to get homeowners to install batteries and automatically dispatch, but also an ongoing performance-based incentive through the active demand response programs of the CLNM that would deliver more benefits on top of the passive demand response. And we got a number of people in the marketplace supporting the proposal. So it's pretty exciting. It's a 50 megawatt by 2025 target, 10,000 households. Pura is inviting a number of proposals. The utilities submitted proposals. Other participants submitted proposals into the process. And I think what Pura is going to do is open up a conversation based on those proposals and identify projects, proposals, structures that they want to move forward with at some future date. So pretty cool. Any questions, comments, Steve, or anybody else comments here?
Brian, this is Steve. Yeah, so I think it's great what you guys put in. The utilities put proposals in too as well, and I think there's definitely room for both Green Bank and utilities and everything to work together on this one. I was curious if you heard anything on the timing of Pura pulling that together. I know they have a lot going on.
Yeah, I suspect, given all the priorities that they're dealing with at this point, that they're managing through those. But no, I haven't. I don't have a sense of when. Yeah, they're going to reopen. As you all see, there's 11 different reopeners. So Pura, every week kind of opens one, closes another, opens one, and they're managing a lot. So.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Okay.
Brian, this is John. I had a question. What 50,000 households? What does that represent in terms of percentage of total households?
Great, good question, John. So when the RCIP kind of reaches its 350, I think we will be somewhere between 5 to 10% of households that can go solar. Of course, I'm sure we all drive down the street and see perfect rooftops that want solar or that can host solar, but not every household wants solar. So, because of aesthetics or whatever reason. But we think that the RCIP achieving 350 is going to be somewhere between 5 to 10% of the TAM, the potential. So there's lots more potential. Just got to get people to want to put solar on their rooftops.
Right.
Cool. Any other questions, comments? All right. So just we're a little over here, but I think I can wrap up maybe in the next 5 minutes. One of the other things on other business, if you have other business, we can raise them. One of the things that Mike Lee asked us, the Green Bank, to do was to speak to how we look at equity issues in terms of what we're doing. So I wanted to start off with, and we've got Emily Basham on the line too, who might step in here and help me out as I work through these. What we're looking at here is essentially our E4 architecture, our economy, environment, energy, and equity architecture. We've been building out our societal benefit calculators for the last 4 to 5 years. We focused initially with DECD on our jobs calculator. So we've got, and this goes back to the prior DECD commissioners in the REL era, but we've updated studies. We worked with DEEP, Department of Public Health, and the EPA on environmental metrics around, when you have efficiency savings or clean energy production, what are you avoiding in terms of air emissions, how that air emission avoidance translates into public health benefits, reduced hospitalizations and the like. We then worked with the Department of Revenue Services on a tax revenue calculator. So the more investment we all see going into energy efficiency and renewable energy in Connecticut, the more tax revenues go back to the state, which is good. We want to see more growth in the economy and providing revenues back to the state so we don't see the raids consistently coming back to us. But we've been spending the last year and a half on our energy and equity metrics. On energy, we're focused on renewable energy, solar PV specifically. We measure all our systems, so we're coming up with an estimate now that uses the actual production against what the utility rates would have been to estimate the energy burden reduction. So Brenda, you'll like this. We can actually look at how much solar PV is reducing the energy affordability gap. So we're working on that. On the equity side, we're really focusing around our principle of trying to mobilize more private investment in underserved markets. So I'll talk about the Community Reinvestment Act in a second, but we've been working with the Department of Banking and the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, specifically around income and secondly around race. So that's our just an overview of our E4 architecture. On equity, equity is not equality. This isn't about providing the same level of incentive across subclasses within an end-use customer. This is about giving certain segments more so that they can realize the same amount of benefits as others are receiving. HES IE is a perfect example of that, right? No copay, everything's paid for. They get income eligible households get more from it. The low to moderate income performance-based incentive in the RCIP is an example of that. We give 2.5 times more incentive to LMI households. So this kind of equity framework is important because when you look at what you're looking at here is just a graph of affordability gaps. Emily Basham on our team has been working with BEIC to understand affordability gaps from a housing perspective, a transportation perspective, and energy perspective. We're starting to look at what we can do to reduce the transportation burden on low-income families. What's the role of EVs and EV infrastructure to help them reduce that burden? You're looking at different area median income classes in different counties by where they're spending their money. And the goal is to try to get people to affordable rates. In the case of energy, 6% of household income is considered to be the affordable rate. It just so happens that our most vulnerable citizens, low to moderate income families, could be paying 10, 15, 20% of their household income on energy. So we have to help them get to the 6%. Brenda, anything else you want to add on that before I kind of move on a little bit on the energy burden? Forgive me.
Covered it very well. I'm just hoping that at some point we as a state define energy affordability so that there's a universal definition of this, and that we work towards keeping energy bills at 6% of annual income for low and moderate income households. Thank you.
Cool. So jumping back. Oh, yeah, please.
I'm sorry, this is Donna Wells. Could I just ask one question on that slide?
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's great. It's just AMI. Is that a statewide average, or is that the local area average?
I think it's local, but let me have Emily. Emily, are you there? Can you respond?
Yep, AMI is area median income, so metro statistical areas.
Okay, great, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so it gets localized. So coming back to the metric that we're working on, it's in development. So, the principle the Green Bank follows is trying to use the limited public or ratepayer resources that we have to unlock more private investment in the clean energy future we want to see. So one of the key income definitions for us is the Community Reinvestment Act. This is a congressional bill that passed in 1977 at the federal level that essentially says if you are a financial institution that has federal depository insurance backing you, then you need to ensure that you are lending into low to moderate income communities, which is defined as less than 80% of metropolitan statistical area adjusted median income levels. So we're working with the Department of Banking around this definition because we want to see more of our local institutions lending to LMI households. So we track the data. We actually have the data. We track it. What we're working with the Department of Banking on is, is this a reasonable way, can we get more and more financial institutions to be lending into 80% area median income? And is this something that you'd want to see CRA achieve? We filed with the federal government, us and the Department of Banking earlier this year, as they were looking at CRA. We essentially said that any activity that supports mitigation and adaptation and environmental infrastructure should be deemed a qualifying activity of local lenders. So we're trying to hone in the banking industry as lending to the things that we want to see being solved. So if I had to guess, we're probably, by the end of this year, we'll have Department of Banking saying this all makes reasonable sense, and we agree we want to see more investment in LMI. The second definition is around race, which is a little bit trickier. There was a study done by Tufts University that looked at majority white, majority black, majority Hispanic households demanding solar that we modeled in this report last year. So we had the data, we took a look at it, and what the data shows is because we've been focusing on this area for the last 5 years, we actually see more Black and Hispanic households demanding solar than white households proportionately. The startling statistic to me was that the number, you can see right here, the number of owner-occupied homes by Hispanic, Black, and white households, it's like abysmal. Like the Hispanic and Blacks just don't own homes, and that to me, I'm an energy guy. I don't think of housing, but it was just shocking that this was a result. So we now look at it. Connecticut is deemed what's called a solar with justice state, which means low to moderate income families are proportionately demanding solar equally to non-LMI families. And we're a beyond parity state when it comes to race, which means Black and Hispanic families are demanding solar more than white families proportionately to home ownership. But we've been working with, and COVID-19 threw us off here, but the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, CHRO, which really oversees the human rights policies of the state, to try to get our arms around race. Can we define race? Can we, as a quasi-public, channel our resources towards race? What does that mean in the context of human rights? So it's a bit of an ongoing conversation. But that, Mike, is just kind of like an overview of our equity work. This is definitely in process as we kind of staged our metric development. I don't know if you or anyone else has a question.
I don't have a question, Brian, but this is Brenda again. That's really quite amazing data that you have. And the question that I always ask is, if all of the inequities or racism in the world were to disappear, that would be great. But would the current systems that are in place still cause more harm versus helping, our most vulnerable population? So I think that's really the number of owner-occupied homes is, and the fact that the Black and brown folks are demanding solar it's a good sign, and prompts me to respond to that as well in my own work.
Yeah, it's we can go into conversations around structural racism. I mean, I think the data is really clear on that, and housing is it makes it so clear. But everything we see in society today is showing it. But I'm sure we could all go into different directions on that. But I think our point here is what we're trying to do is to do our best to maximize the amount of private investment into vulnerable communities, because they're being left behind, whether that's unconscious bias, whether that's structural racism, whatever. We don't care. We just need more investment going into these communities so that they could be better off. Like just, let's get. So that's kind of our. We do care about it, but we need to mobilize investment here. People are leaving vulnerable communities behind, and it's not right.
Brian, this is John. So does that, since the amount of home ownership is low among those communities, are we working on how to get to people who rent, and what do we, how do we approach that?
Mm-hmm. Great question. I don't know if Brenda or Emily want to speak about community solar as an area in, and this is just from the renewable energy side. There's a whole efficiency side to this as well, but that might be a place to get to renters a bit. Emily,
right.
You want to?
Yeah, so this is Brenda again. Definitely shared solar and increase access to these SCEF projects that are also on the horizon. And eliminating some of the barriers. One of them is the application process, where folks apply for energy assistance. They're automatically connected to the federal WAP program, the Weatherization Assistance Program. But for the local HESIE program, it's a little bit more complicated, and the application process requires folks to know that this program is available to them. So there's some outreach opportunities there to increase the enrollment, and I'll go ahead and stop there and let Emily, if she wanted to chime in on that, some of the challenges.
Yeah, as far as the SCEF program goes, and its statutory requirements are really aimed at bringing the benefits of the clean energy facilities to low and moderate income residents, utility customers. So the utilities are submitting plans for how best to organize that and prioritize enrolling people into what would be a subscriber credit on their bill. So that I think as a policy goal really targets providing that to low and moderate income customers.
Great. And just a follow-on comment, like John, we've heard a lot about community solar and SCEF over the years, and it struggles to kind of get up and running. I think now we're operating underneath a 150 megawatt procurement, 25 megawatts a year for the next 6 years. And you're clearly hearing the prioritization directed to low income in organizations that serve low income, which is great. One of the interesting ideas that Eversource brought out, which I think was really great, was kind of separating the project development from the subscriber. So the way these programs usually work, typically work in other states, is you're a developer, you develop a project, and then you sign up a number of end-use customers who become subscribers to the project. In this case, Eversource would work directly with the developer to take the long-term power purchase agreement of Energy and Rex, and it would kind of be isolated within its own PPA structure. And separate from that would be low-income ratepayers are opted into or would have to opt out of receiving a credit. So literally, these residents will receive a 2.5 cent per kilowatt hour credit on their bill. The question is, how can we turn that credit on their bill into reducing more energy burden, which is what Brenda is after. You know, it's like, how can we just turn that community solar project or whatever SCEF project into more for that homeowner, because we have to keep, you know, the $17 a year, well, whatever it is, a month or a year, we've got to turn it into deep energy efficiency savings and not just settle with giving them a 2.5 cent per kilowatt hour credit. All right, that was a lot. We covered a lot there. Mike, any other thoughts or any other questions? We're happy to sit down and go into further detail here, but you can see it's in.
This was very helpful.
Cool. All right, Eric. So the next joint committee meeting that we have on the calendar, I don't think we'll be at UI. It would be great, Liz, to be down there with you, but I think we're still going to be online. So the next meeting is December 16th. It's our final meeting of the year. I think that was it.
That's a pretty scary thought. December 16th, is that close by?
Yeah.
Okay, well, great job, everybody. If there's no other comments, we'll just have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. This is Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda. Second? Well, this is an easy one.
This is John, second.
Thanks, John. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none. All those who approve, say aye.
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 Opposed? None, no adjourn, no abstains. Thank you, everybody. Hang in there, stay healthy, and we'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye.
Same to you.
Take
Take care.
We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.